Muhammad Ali, a fighter whose words hit harder than his punches.
We have a serious race problem in America.
People didn't like black people. And he was on TV talking about, I'm pretty. That was unheard of.
I can't be me, I'm pretty as a girl.
A man who sacrificed everything for his beliefs.
His rejected induction into the United States military.
Muhammad Ali was the most hated person in America.
You set the pace for athletes to be principled.
A champion in the ring and a hero outside of it.
Ali's legacy, it meant just be yourself and believe in yourself.
The man they called GOAT, the greatest of all time. This is Fightin' Talk.
From the moment I met him, that day sitting on his mom's porch, it was obvious even then that Muhammad was a different spirit. He was of a giving spirit. Who in their early 20s would take time with every kid in the neighborhood? And he enjoyed it. He loved it. He just had that kind of spirit in his body, I think, when he was born. That's just who he was.
Muhammad Ali, born as Cassius Clay, began his boxing career completely by chance at the age of 12 when he and his brother got their bikes stolen.
We started crying, and somebody stopped the man and said, "Mister, can you tell us where we can find a policeman?" And so he said, "Well, the boys, go downstairs in the basement of this building. There's a boxing gym down there. The policeman works down there." That was Officer Joe Martin. He's the man who originally started us to boxing.
Joe Martin taught them how to box in case they ever found the guy who stole their bikes. They didn't get their revenge, but they were hooked. Clay threw himself into boxing, training intensely. It paid off. He rose quickly through the amateur ranks, and at age 18, he won gold at the 1960 Rome Olympics and turned professional. Clay spent the early 60s living in Miami and training at the world-famous 5th Street Gym on the beach. The hotels on the island were designated whites only, so he made his home on the mainland, jogging the 4 miles to Miami Beach every day to box.
Ali grew up in a time where lynchings were not abnormal, schools were segregated, and the rule of the day at the time was separate but equal. But as anybody with eyes could see, is that it was really separate and radically unequal.
Clay's experiences of racism and discrimination encouraged him to join the Nation of Islam, a Muslim movement focused on black empowerment led by Elijah Muhammad.
It was no Negroes out there, it was white folks.
Clay secretly converted to Islam, keeping the public focus on his boxing career. In 1964, he faced the reigning world champion Sonny Liston in a fight that propelled him into the global spotlight.
Cassius Clay!
The weigh-in before this first Sonny Liston fight, where he was just raving.
Chivalry and our two pretty down. We can't be. I'm ready to rumble.
People were frightened for him, thinking that he was scared for his life. They had never seen anything like him. And I had never seen anything like him. At that point, I'm about 7 years old. The spectacle that he created, you had to go for the ride. How could you turn away? And it didn't matter if you hated the braggadocio or if you loved it. You had to go for the ride.
Clay defied the 8-to-1 odds. He upset the champ with a technical knockout, becoming the heavyweight champion of the world. He also introduced people to his quick-witted speech. Lightning fast and ultra-confident, his spoken word joined a movement of African-American artists making their voices heard.
When this young, black, brash, proud, beautiful man would come on TV and saying, I'm pretty, I'm this, I'm that, I'm confident, I can beat anybody. At the time, no one person of color felt that way about themselves because people didn't like black people. And he was on TV talking about, I'm pretty, I'm confident, I'm gonna whoop you, and I'm the greatest. That was unheard of.
You look at me, I'm loaded with confidence. I can't beat me. I done had 180 amateur fights, 22 professional fights, and I'm pretty as a girl.
Clay was enjoying meteoric success, but only his inner circle knew that privately he was preparing to make an announcement that would shock the world. Ali was still known as Cassius Clay as his career was taking off. And around him, 1960s America was a pressure cooker of racial tensions. On the sporting stage, he was king of the world. But off it, he was still considered a second-class citizen, living under the South's racist Jim Crow laws.
Ali said, I've been around the world, I got the Golden Gloves, and I cannot buy hamburger at the place of my choice. He began to apply his skill set to our situation.
Buoyed by his victory against Sonny Liston, Clay knew the time had come. The day after the fight, he announced his conversion to Islam to the world. Then he changed his name.
Clay was a white man's name. It was a slave name.
First, he followed Malcolm X, adopting the single letter to symbolize his ancestors' unknown surname. Soon after, he took his Islamic name, becoming Muhammad Ali.
I'm no longer Clay, I'm no longer a slave, so now I'm Muhammad Ali.
My father, his prowess, his talent in the ring, I don't feel made him the greatest of all time. I think his decision to convert to Islam and his passion, because he felt that his religion gave him freedom at the time where he wasn't free.
Ali's membership of the Nation of Islam polarized America. Its leader, Elijah Muhammad, preached racial segregation, calling white men devils. Ali made inflammatory comments too. In an infamous interview with Playboy magazine, he called for the murder of mixed-race couples and advocated for a black-only nation.
When whites at the time heard of this notion of black separatism, they were freaking out, when in the reality of it was that America was premised on a separatist notion that in fact they did not want whites to mingle with blacks. So this idea that somehow the Nation of Islam came up, concocted this crazy notion that we wanted to be separate from white America, that was in fact not radical at all. It just became radical when black people were saying it.
The black empowerment movement was evident in Ali's Miami neighborhood of Overtown, a hub for African-American civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and stars like Aretha Franklin, Ella Fitzgerald, and Sam Cooke.
It wasn't simply just about fighting against white supremacy. It was about loving black people, loving on black people, his loyalty to black people, his refusal to try to suppress or to hide or downplay his Africanness.
We love my color. I just love myself.
The first real test of Ali's faith came in the form of the Vietnam War, a conflict he believed was morally wrong. In 1967, Ali was called before a draft board in Houston, but he refused to go to Vietnam.
Friday in Houston was the champion's moment of truth. He showed up at the induction center, but refused to step forward.
I will not go 10,000 miles from here to help murder another poor people simply to continue the domination of white slave masters over the darker people of the earth.
He sought status as a conscientious objector. His request was denied, and he was arrested.
Ali was all about asking questions. Everything he did made you ask a question. When he would say, I ain't got no quarrel with no Viet Cong, it would make you stop and see the world and our war with Vietnam in a completely different way. No matter where you stood, it was a big question. How can he do this?
He got a lot of heat when he made his conversion. He got a lot of heat when he protested the Vietnam War. He lost a lot of white fans. As a result of that, got death threats as a result of that. So it was anything but a honeymoon period when he took some of these stances.
An all-white jury took less than 30 minutes to sentence him to 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. Punished for resisting the draft, he was stripped of his world heavyweight title almost instantly.
He could have worked out a very sweet deal where the military would have sent him around to box exhibitions for the troops abroad. He wouldn't have had to pay that big a price. He could have still been heavyweight champion. He would have still been able to make money through fighting.
Ali avoided jail time while the case escalated to the Supreme Court, but he was forced into professional exile, making sometimes just $500 from speaking engagements instead of the millions he would have earned from boxing matches. But he never considered it a sacrifice.
He thought he had something greater than the money lost, which was the dignity and the adoration from groups that otherwise would have seen him just as a boxer. We can see him as a man of justice, a source of peace and reconciliation. So he became a huge force in the peace movement, but it's also being a Muslim Muhammad Ali, it had an impact around the whole Muslim world, 2 billion people.
Ali's stance inspired the next generation of sports stars to use their platform to fight injustice.
NFL star suddenly at the center of a national debate before a big game. San Francisco 49er quarterback Colin Kaepernick refusing to stand for the national anthem.
Muhammad Ali at one time was the most hated person. Yeah. People need to Google, do research.
You set the pace for athletes to be principled and willing to risk to gain. So then if you look at LeBron James and Dwayne Wade, when Trayvon Martin is killed, putting on their hoodies to identify with the community.
It's time to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, what are we doing to create change?
It's on us to challenge each other to do even more than what we already do in our own communities.
The drum major for athletes and entertainers is Muhammad Ali.
The 70s began and Ali entered the new decade galvanized to box again. By March 1970, he'd got back his license to fight professionally. His next challenge was to reclaim his title. On March 8, 1971, Ali faced Joe Frazier in what was billed as the fight of the century at Madison Square Garden. Ali's suspension from the sport meant that it was the first time that 2 undefeated boxers had fought for the heavyweight title. But while Frazier was in his prime, Ali had been away from the ring for nearly 4 years.
And we saw this amazing athlete who could dance for 15 rounds when he was young and nobody could get close to him. Then he starts to slow down and he's faced with the relentlessness of Joe Frazier. He had just lost 3.5 years of his prime by standing up to the draft. That was an amazing opponent to take on.
The years away from the sport had taken their toll. Ali lost the fight. Outside the ring, he was still battling to clear his name as a draft dodger. Finally, in June 1971, the Supreme Court overturned his conviction, upholding his religious reasons for refusing to fight. Ali was back to focusing on boxing. He beat the favorite George Foreman in 1974's The Rumble in the Jungle, taking back his title.
When I got to Africa, I had one hell of a rumble. I had to beat Tarzan's behind first for claiming to be the king of the jungle.
He took on Joe Frazier for the 3rd and final time in 1975 for the Thrilla in Manila. It was the peak of their bitter rivalry. Ali left victorious.
I done handcuff lightning and I hospitalize a brick. I'm so bad I make medicine sick.
By the late 70s, though, Ali was slowing down. He lost his last 2 fights, and in 1981, he retired from boxing.
The famous dance is over.
For years, family members and friends had been urging Ali to retire. This time, he says he will, and appears to mean it.
Just have to face it. Nothing lasts ever, not even Muhammad Ali.
He decided to dedicate the rest of his life to full-time humanitarian work. But his family was increasingly worried about his health. What started as a tremor in his thumb was confirmed as Parkinson's disease in 1984. At only 42 years old, Ali faced an illness that would strip him of his physical strength and rob the Louisville Lip of his powers of speech.
How regally he deals with this disease and doesn't back away from it. Goes to the Olympics in Atlanta in '96, holds the Olympic torch in a trembling hand, and can't get it in the right place to light the Olympic cauldron. The courage and the bravery that had to take. Everything that we see on those stages now is completely choreographed. Ali was never choreographed that way. It was all real, and we were all living it with him.
By the mid-70s, Ali had moved to mainstream Islam, and his humanitarian work won him international respect, uniting almost all his critics. He traveled across the globe, hand-delivering food and medication to hospitals and street children across Africa and Asia. He campaigned against apartheid in South Africa, went on a peace mission to Afghanistan, and supported countless charities and causes.
Muhammad had a saying, service to others is the rent we pay for our room here on earth. Service was in the fabric and the core of his being. It's what he did every day. He called them good deeds. He always felt that boxing gave him an opportunity to do much bigger things to help people.
In late 1990, Ali flew to Iraq to personally negotiate with Saddam Hussein for the release of 15 American hostages. President George H.W. Bush told him not to go, but he went anyway. Ali was dismissed by many in the media as a celebrity overstepping his reach, but he persisted, attending meeting after meeting, even as his Parkinson's made it hard to speak clearly. Incredibly, he succeeded, and the 15 captive Americans were released.
My dad came to Las Vegas years ago, and he attended a big fight. And he was sitting ringside, and he said, "I think I'm gonna make a comeback." And I said, "Wow, Daddy." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, take about maybe 6, maybe 7 months." And he clearly had Parkinson's for now over, 20 years. I said, "If you did that, you won't only shock the world once, you'll shock the world twice." And he just started laughing. He didn't let his disease define who he was.
Ali never forgot his hometown of Louisville, Kentucky, where his legacy burns brightly. At the Louisville TKO boxing gym, the next generation of fighters is following the champ's example.
I want to make a name for the females. I want to be female boxer coming out of Louisville. Stephanie Malone, that's what I want. This gym, you have to have a certain GPA and everything to compete. And this kind of correlates to Muhammad Ali. He would say education is education is a must. So like me mentoring the kids it's something that I love doing. I love giving back.
He was a role model for the world, not just for me and my kids, for the world. Right here, when you step in the gym, you have an opportunity to change your life.
I got into it watching films with my dad of Floyd and Muhammad Ali. So I went to a gym and just started boxing. And then since then, I've just been loving it, been in the gym. You might be hanging out with the wrong crowd, and boxing keep you away from that stuff, that negativity and stuff.
I'd rather live my dream out before I let the next person stop me, and I feel like that's the mark that Ali left, not even on the city of Louisville, just on everybody as a whole.
Can my title be taken without me being whooped? No! One more time. No! That's all I want.
He gave people hope. He stood up for what he believed in. He's a great role model, hands down.
God is watching me. God don't praise me because I beat Joe Frazier. God don't give nothing about Joe Frazier. He wants to know, how do we treat each other? How do we help each other?
You may not realize it, but Muhammad Ali is a seed. And we all know what happens when we place that seed in the ground. I think it's going to blossom. I think a lot of people around our community will find themselves reaching a little bit higher. And I think that the spirit of Muhammad Ali will grow within our city even after he has been placed into the ground.
Muhammad Ali died on June 3, 2016, at age 74. Thousands lined the streets for the funeral procession, which followed the route of his 1960 Olympic gold medal parade. He left detailed instructions for his memorial service, which he wanted to be a multi-faith event open to ordinary fans as well as VIP guests.
I will always think of Muhammad as a totally free man of faith.
Every religion, every culture, every race was pretty much represented.
He was a free, independent spirit.
He left us a gift by showing that he can still unite people.
The greatest lesson I learned from my brother is to treat people with kindness, to be good and decent and nice to people. He was a very happy, jolly, loving person to people.
I asked him once, "What's your definition of evil?" And he said, "Unfriendliness." I mean, that just tells you everything you need to know.
I think Muhammad's essence was a pure love for humanity.
I think one of his greatest gifts was his heart. He had a warm smile, and he made people feel like they were the greatest of all time. He made them feel that.